Welcome to the historic Germantown neighborhood in Nashville, Tennessee, live at the space at 100th Taylor, and we have a great musical guest today, WILDWOOD. Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Anne, welcome, WILDWOOD.
Yes.
How are you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's so great to see you, especially because we tried to shoot before.
We tried.
And there was a little mishap with a flat tire.
I got a flat tire on my way here last time.
Right.
And thank you for having me back.
But you know what? When you have to persist, these are the best interviews, they're the best guests.
Yeah.
It never fails. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And of course, WILDWOOD, I mean, you're so unbelievable. Like your talent, your fiddle playing, your guitar playing, you're a singer, you're a songwriter, you're an entrepreneur. So I could talk to you for 17 hours. I was the hardest thing, what channel to take. But yeah, so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with this. 2021 is over. We're probably in 2022 when this is airing.
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn last year, and that you are taking into this new year that you learned last year?
You know, we were just talking about this earlier. Since the pandemic, everything's gotten really busy again, and even busier than before. And I think it's really hard to stay focused on your priorities when things get busy. And I definitely lost sight of my priorities in the last 6 months. And my goal for 2022 is to stay focused on the things that matter most to me, which is creating my own work. And I also, of course, love working with other people as a fiddle player, producer, songwriter. But I have art to put out, and that's what I'm going to focus on this year. Yeah.
And speaking of art, I mean, the art is in your blood. It's in your DNA. I mean, you basically come from, I don't think I'm overstating it here, from the music lineage that has made American history what it is. I mean, from the Carter family, basically. I mean, you're a direct descendant of AP Carter and everyone, right? Absolutely. So let me ask you this, Anne. When did you first realize, as a little girl, little Anne, running around the house, that you were my family is different in a good, they've done something cool?
Yeah.
When did you realize that?
Well, my first exposure to music is before I could even talk. My aunts and uncles were all playing music all the time. My aunt had a gospel record out. My uncles had a recording studio. And in fact, I brought a guitar with me today that's one of my uncles that I just recently purchased from his widow. But I was always around this amazing Appalachian folk, bluegrass, old-time music. And people would kind of say in the family, oh, we're related to Johnny Cash, or we're related to the Carter family. And I didn't know who they were when I was little. So I would always be like, oh, cool, But when you're that young, you don't really realize it. So all I really remember early on is just being around great music all the time, and it always being family together. We would have the upright bass and the guitar and the hammer dulcimer and somebody on mandolin. And that was our holidays and our summers. It was surrounded around music. And probably when I got into my teens, when I actually was able to meet June and John, I met them a couple of times when I was 11 to 13 before they passed, and I got to actually play music for them and with them, which was so special. That's when I realized, wow, these people are really special, and I started to understand more of the history of country music and how influential AP, Maybelle, and Sarah and their music was in early American music, really beyond country. It was some of the first things that were on radio, and it's really cool to have that in the blood and just to know the stories. Sure.
I want to ask you about the first time you played with John and all that, but first let me ask you about your Uncle Bugs.
Yes.
Right, let's take it back there for a minute, because he's the one that gave you your first instrument, right?
Yes.
Tell me about your Uncle Bugs.
Thank you for bringing his name up. That's really special that you know his name. My Uncle Bugs was the person who got me into music. When I was 5 years old, he gave me my first violin, and he also had a brother that was musical named Mike, and they're all on the Carter side. Yeah. Actually, my Uncle Bugs played guitar for Johnny Cash's very last performance at the Carter family fold. Wow. So if you YouTube that, you'll see my Uncle Bugs up there on electric guitar. But he's who started this passion and got me into it, and he helped me record an album when I was 15 at his studio. And if it weren't for him, I don't think this would be the career that I'm pursuing at all, and that I would have the passion I do. So I owe it all to him. And he unfortunately passed away when I was 21. And I mentioned I have his guitar. I just recently bought it from his widow, which is really great to have it back in my hands, and I brought it here today to play on.
Oh my God. And you can tell when you were like sound checking before the show, it just has like a different...
It has his soul in it.
It has something
when
in
I
it.
first opened the case, and I don't know if they can see it on the cameras, but when I first opened this case, I just, like, the smell, it reminded me of him, and I could just feel his presence. And every day since I've had this guitar, I keep it in my bedroom, and I just look at it, and I'm like, hey, Uncle Bugs, what's up? I miss him so much, and it's a way to feel kind of his presence.
Amazing. And like he's totally with you.
Yeah, he is.
In many ways.
He's here today with us.
Yeah.
So.
What's up, Uncle Bugs? Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I love it.
Thank you for bringing him up.
Yeah, of course, of course. And okay, so let me ask about also. Okay, talk to me about the first time you played with John.
Yeah, and me playing with them, the extent of that was...
Were you nervous?
You know what?
Because your family.
I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Right.
I was like 11, 10, 12 years old on the front porch of their home in Hiltons, Virginia, with my great aunt and my Uncle Bugs and my mom and people that they've known for years. So... I mean, not really. It was just playing, the old time tunes. It was like a
family gathering?
Family gathering, like all these things were, just playing music together. And they did like it when I would play, because I was a classically trained violinist. And everybody else in my family just played by ear, and it was kind of the twangy honky-tonk stuff. And they loved that I could play classical, so they would request that I play my classical songs. So I have a couple of photos, actually, of me with Johnny Cash holding my Suzuki, like, Book 5, while I'm sitting there, like, playing classical music for him in June. And I love that memory of playing classical songs for them. That's amazing. Yeah.
Take us a little bit, just like a second before we pivot off Johnny. Like how is like a family dynamic reunion when you're like with Johnny Cash? And what I mean is it just like another guy of the family, or is it like... It was
very special.
Okay.
And so my grandmother, her name was Juanita, and she was first cousins with June. They grew up together in Hiltons, Virginia, this tiny little town in southwest Virginia in the mountains. And it's a very small little place, really quaint, with just really humble people. Like my great-grandfather, Jim Carter, was a preacher, and a lot of their family were farmers. And whenever Johnny Cash was in town, it was a huge deal. And everybody would come out to the Carter Family Fold for him. In fact, the Carter Family Fold is this place that honors old-time music that was started by A.P. Carter and his children, and it's continued on with his grandchildren now. They carry on this tradition, and it's every week they do live music, and the rule is that it has to be all acoustic, no electric plug-in at all. Whenever Johnny Cash came, Jeanette would let him plug in. He was the one artist that could have electric guitars, and so if that tells you how special he was. I mean, the whole town just would go nuts when they were in town, and they were like family more, to more than just the people in the family. Everybody in that town felt like they were family with them because they were so loving and so generous. And I remember June had a big birthday party one time there, and like the whole town came out.
Right.
It was just everybody.
Right.
So.
Right. And what role does religion play in your life? And the reason why I ask is because I know the Carter family at the end, they really embraced it. I know Johnny.
Oh my gosh.
At the end, he also grasped onto it.
Yes.
So I'm curious. So a lot of your lineage in Virginia, like, kind of like drifted that way. What's your role with religion right now?
That's a good question. I'm very spiritual, and I feel very connected to especially a lot of my family who have passed.
Yeah.
And keeping that faith and hope and seeing your loved ones again is a really big, part of it for me. And that's kind of where I am with it. But I do remember even as a kid, Johnny Cash being very religious and very patriotic. He took a lot of pride in his time in the service. And my dad was also in the military, and he always, like, whenever I would see him, he'd be like, tell your dad, thank you for his service. He was very proud of people who served our country, and also very, very religious.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And one of the things that, like, we love about you, besides obviously like your talent and your charisma, is you are, you're well-traveled. Like, you've had some really great international experiences, and part of the Anne Buckle story, it has to be said, was like that chapter that you had in France that first time you went to La Sorbonne, right?
I did.
You went to La Sorbonne, and you were what, 20, early 20s?
I was 20.
You were 20.
Yeah.
How was that chapter for you? Like, how do you remember that chapter of your life, and how did it influence like the amazing person that you are today?
Thank you so much for that. And you've been traveling a lot as well. You're international and lingual, and it's amazing always. So when I was in, probably around the same time John and June passed away, I took this random trip to Disney World and went to Epcot of all places.
That's international.
You know what?
That counts.
I fell in love with France. I watched the little movie there, and I was like, I want to go there sometime. I want to speak the language. I want to live there. And I did. So I started studying in like 8th grade and into high school, and then I went and studied at the Sorbonne, and just loved it so much. And while I was there, tried to travel to other new countries, and that's just always been a love of mine. And so when I went into college, I was always torn between my heart, which was music, and then kind of the head, which was, well, I speak French and I could learn another language and go into diplomacy or do something with, you know, foreign affairs. And so I actually majored in music and foreign affairs. And I did an internship at the U.S. Embassy in Paris, and I also worked at the U.S. Embassy in Washington, D.C., not the embassy, the State Department, and kind of was choosing between a path in international work or music, and then at the end of the day, here I am. So I chose music, but I have a big love for travel and other cultures and other languages, and I think that definitely makes its way into my music as well. There's a song I put out a couple years ago called Shattered, and we made the music video in Paris, just on iPhone.
Hey, it's great.
But yeah, that song has a lot of accordions in it and different kind of French gypsy fiddle parts, and I love to bring in different influences from the travels. And you know, June was like that too. She loved to travel, and they had a home in Jamaica, and they, you know, collected things from all over the world, and she loved antique shopping especially, and I remember just seeing so many cool things in her home, you know, from all the different places they had been in the world.
Super cool.
So that must be in our family too, like a desire to see the world and collect things.
I love it. I love it. And when you were like deciding between diplomacy and music, like what was like the moment where you're like, was there a moment, or was it just natural that you drifted towards music? You
know what? There were two moments. Okay. The first happened at the U.S. Embassy in Paris. I was, I guess, 22 years old at the time, just about to kind of wrap up my school and decide if I wanted to continue with the job there or not. And we had done a lot of cultural programming with like American artists, like Will Smith came over and did a program, and we had Spike Lee come over and do a program, and all these really cool people from especially Hollywood were coming out and doing this cultural diplomacy with the kids there, and they were freaking out over these cool American actors and directors and musicians. And I was in the back of the room with one of these programs with a clipboard, kind of doing the logistics, realizing like that's the real work that's being done in diplomacy is the culture, not the person with the clipboard, you know. Of course they play a role in it, but I want to be the music that's brought over, not the logistician. So that was kind of my first moment. And my second was at the end of college. I had a mentor who had actually been a songwriter in Nashville, and he's now a pastor at the school, so he kind of transitioned. But he had had a lot of success in the 90s and early 2000s with a bunch of big cuts on songs. And I was telling him, hey, I think I'm going to go to Nashville and do the thing. And he goes, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I will tell you, as someone who did that, he's like, it's heartbreaking. It's soul shattering. And if you have any other passion that you're good at in life, you need to take that instead, because it's going to be an easier path. And he's like, you already have an in with the State Department. You've done 2 internships with them. You've had a job offer. Take it. Yeah. And my heart said no. To him, I kind of politely shook my head yes, but inside I was like...
That's when you knew.
That's when I knew. I was like, no, I don't care how hard it is. I'm going to move to Nashville and do music.
Amazing.
I'm getting chills saying that again, because I remember we were crossing the street from Chipotle going back toward campus, and I remember that conversation. And it almost took somebody telling me what not to do for me to be like, no, that's what I'm going to do. Amazing. And I love him. He's wonderful. And it was very good advice, but I didn't take it.
Listen, he helped you. But it's funny you say that, because just yesterday I was talking to a friend. He plays with Sturgill Simpson. And we were talking about how the struggle is real. Like, it's a hard life or whatever. But when and I saw him this summer in Charlotte, and you connect to 30,000 people, and you have these sparks, where you're uniting 30,000 people, regardless of their shape, sizes, religious beliefs, political beliefs, into one same energy. And I was in the side stage, and I felt it, and I was like, I got it. I got it. Why people like you do what you do? Because if you break it down, that is probably the essence of humanity, to share something like that, to give.
It is.
And you're tapping into it.
And sharing stories. I think more than anything, I feel like I've become more and more a storyteller over these years, and my songs are my stories, and being able to sit in front of a crowd and share that and have them resonate, it is the essence of humanity to share that history with each other.
And speaking of that, You've played with the Chicks when they were huge. You opened for
Yeah.
them. You've played the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, you've like hit some hardcore stages.
I've had some really fun experiences.
Yeah. So like when we're having this conversation, like which ones jump to your mind?
Probably both of those.
Yeah.
Also, just right now, just thinking, I played the Bluebird Cafe last week, and that was always like a dream of mine. And over it was great. Over the last 10 years, I've become kind of a regular in some of their series that they have, and it's always so special there and so magical, kind of in like the mecca for songwriters.
What makes the Bluebird so special?
They're the history, all the people that have been in that space sharing songs for the first time, and also just the audience is so intent as listeners when you're performing there that there's nothing like that. I mean, even the arena tour with the Chicks, which was amazing, it's 15,000 people. But they're like talking, they're drinking, they're dancing. When you're at the Bluebird, you have 100 people just focused on your story and feeling it. You can feel the emotion in that room in a really special way that I think is unmatched.
I love it, Anne. You're being so good with your time. Let me ask you about this. I can feel that you're like a really like strong and persisting and just a really brave and courageous soul. Like, what is something that people don't know that you've overcome? Because I know you've.
Oh my gosh.
Because I can tell I can tell that there's stuff that like, because life has thrown us all challenges.
Oh
right?
yeah.
But I feel like that life does not happen to you; it happens for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like you live this, and you've come out stronger on the other side. I just have this sense of asking you this, like,
You're so true, and I think a lot of people in this town and in this industry really do have to overcome a lot, and. I've been here almost 10 years now. I'm on my 9th year, and they say it's a 10-year town, so we'll see if the magic happens in year 10. But when you're in this town that long pursuing it, you're going to have a lot of hardship, whether it's rejection. I've had people tell me that I'm horrible, or that you just want to be a pretty face on television. Why don't you go be a news anchor? And I'm like, this is all about music for me. Like, I mean, I've had so many negative things said to me. And early on, I would cry, and then you just kind of get to where you believe in yourself more and more and more.
Yeah.
And so, I guess just over and over again being told no or rejected, or that you're not good, or that you're not young, or that you're not pretty, or whatever the rejection is, I've pretty much heard them all.
Yeah.
And I just don't care anymore.
I love that.
But it takes time, it takes time, and multiple of those experiences. The first rejection you get hurts really bad. The second one maybe hurts worse because you didn't think it was going to happen again. And then by the 100th one, you're just like, thanks, moving on. And then right when you get there, people tend to stop rejecting you. It's kind of funny. Like, you kind of get to this place where you don't even care about their validation, but then they're like, oh, I love it. And you're like, cool.
Yeah. That's funny.
And by people, I mean the industry, not individuals. It's always so special when any like audience member connects with something and loves it. That's the dream. When somebody is like, wow, this song is my story, and I was over there crying listening. I'm like, I'm so glad that you got to hear it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's finish with this. We were talking about your new album, Off Camera.
Yeah.
And you were telling me that you were like a little bit behind where you wanted to be.
Yes.
What happens when, like, through an artist? Because I'm fascinated by the creative process.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when you're doing great in a process, and life happens, whatever, and like the momentum is kind of like it kind of fizzles.
Yeah.
How do you pick like that momentum back up as an artist? How do you push that through?
Well, you go to therapy first, which I did a little bit of that this year. And you realize that you're just on your own timeline.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen when it did, and we just moved forward. And what's interesting? My therapist actually told me this, so I owe her the credit. But she's like, the songs will have a new meaning when you put them out now. And I have a couple of songs on my album about hardship, actually. One of them is called Break Me. Wrote it with my friend Rachel Loy, who's fantastic, producer and bass player and songwriter here in town. And it's just about this experience of being shut down so many times, but I think the hook is, let's see. You can, what is it? I gotta sing it. You can't drag my name through the Tennessee mud. Leave me weak and weary in a pool of blood. You can beat me down, but I'll get back up. Good luck trying to break me. That's what it is. Good luck trying to break me.
Yeah.
That song, after this chapter that's been kind of challenging, takes on a new meaning, and there's a new story to tell with something we wrote 2 years ago now, which is, you know, so that's kind of the approach my therapist helped me realize, which is these songs aren't going anywhere, but just reframe the story around them to be true to you, whatever that truth is. And for me, the last 6 months have been really challenging.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah.
I love that.
Thank you. So thank you, Porter's Call down in Franklin, for my therapist.
Amazing. And you've been amazing. Like I said, I could talk to you for 17 hours.
I could talk to you for 17 hours. So, we should sometime.
So you need to come back regularly. You need to be a friend of the show, and I could come and check in.
And we just need to go get drinks sometime.
Exactly. I would love that. I would love that. Why don't you take us away with a song with that beautiful guitar of yours?
Yeah. So, should I face this way for this?
No, you can just.
I can stay right here. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the guitar that was my Uncle Bug's. It's an old Martin from the '90s that I think he had custom made. Was the story, but my Uncle Bug's was full of a lot of stories. You never really know what was true and what wasn't. But we talked a lot about Hilton's, Virginia, and that area of the world is where my mom came from. She grew up in a town called Mountain City, Tennessee, which is in the northeast corner of the state. And when she met my dad, they met in that town, both teachers actually, they met teaching. They moved to Georgia to take a new job opportunity. And so I grew up in Georgia away from my family, but every time, my whole life that I've gone back to Mountain City and Hilton's in that region, it's felt like my home. And to this day, even with so many of my family who've passed and aren't there anymore, it still feels like my home. So I wrote this song as kind of an ode to that town and a tribute to my family who were there. And we put this out a couple of months ago. So this is called Mountain City. Played on Uncle Bug's guitar from Mountain City. This is actually the guitar I learned to play guitar on. My very first thing he taught me was... I can't do it without a pick, but the Folsom Prison lick, that was my first thing I learned from him. Anyway, this is Mountain City. Something about these winding roads makes me feel I'm home again. Taking me back to what I know, reminding me of who I am. Something about this cold mountain air helps me breathe. There's something about this little town that brings me back to me. Oh, how I miss my grandma and the flowers she planted in her yard. Oh, how I miss my granddaddy and the smell of his old cigars. Even though I've been away for a couple of years and nobody here knows my name, there's still no home like this place. Something about these starry nights makes my heart feel whole again. Singing old hymns by firelight cleanses me of my city sins. Something about these wide open skies helps me see. There's something about this little town that brings me back to me. Oh, how I miss all those summers staying up late, counting falling stars. Oh, how I miss my two uncles and the strumming of their Martin guitars. Even though I've been away for a couple of years and nobody here knows my name, there's still no home like this place. And I would give anything if I could just go back for one more day. But all I have left now are memories, and I come back here so they won't fade. Oh, how I miss my innocence and my unbroken heart. Oh, how I miss the way I used to be before all the scars. But oh, how I love the way this little town reminds you of who you are. And even though I've been away and nobody knows my name, there's still no home like this place. No, there's no home quite like this.
And you took us there. You
Thank
painted
you.
a story, like so beautiful.
I almost lost it on the line about the uncle's Martin guitar, because this is his Martin guitar that I was singing about. And
Felt it.
I actually haven't played that song on his guitar yet, so I'm going to go to my car and cry after this. But
Thank you for sharing that moment with us.
yeah,
And
thank you so much for having me and listening.
Oh my God, and you're amazing. And we're so glad that we were able to make this happen.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
And thank you to Richard, the camera guy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rich.